Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Discourse for today, November 11th, 2022. I'm your host, Tristan. How we doing today, chat? Just gotta take a look and see what the numbers. Hey, ooh, look at all those people. Yeah, my name's Tristan. I'm the host of the channel Step Back at stepbackhistory.com. You're probably watching that right now. And I'm also the host of co-host of It's Probably Not Aliens, which is a podcast where we talk about conspiracy theories and UFOs and ancient aliens and all that kind of fun stuff. Two very fun projects. I stream on Fridays at noon for a couple hours while I take some questions, relax, and sort of get a start to the weekend for everybody. If you want to support my work, the best places you can do so are at patreon.com/stepbackhistory. I'm actually going to add a new one to this. One second. I'm just going to do a last minute. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So, if you want to support my work, you can do so at a handful of places. All right. You can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory, where for as little as 84 cents a month, you can support my work and get videos early with bonus sections. Every Step Back video now has a bonus section that is only available to people on Patreon and Nebula. So if you go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory, for as little as 84 cents a month, you can get access to that. But I have all sorts of fun tiers, but I do intend to make my intend to make a strong effort to have it so that my Patreon is the best $1 value Patreon out there. So you get a lot for it. I give like updates and everything like that, and yeah. Also, another place if you want to get access to Step Back's bonus content, but also want bonus content, ad-free content from tons of your favorite creators, you can go to nebula.tv/stepback. If you go to nebula.tv/stepback and sign up for their service, which is even cheaper, I think, than a Step Back membership, if not on par at least, you get access to all of my videos early and with no ads and with the bonus section, but also tons and tons and tons of other content. So another great place, and of course signing up does help me out. You could also become a channel member if you wish. Amazon Prime, if you have Amazon Prime, you can give a Twitch Prime subscription, and that would also help out a ton. It's free, doesn't cost you anything if it's baked into your Amazon Prime membership, and if you don't use that money, Amazon basically just gets to keep it. So definitely use it on somebody. If you use it on me, be very grateful, but you know. And if you do have a little bit of cash, super chats, bits, and Twitch subscriptions are all very welcome, very appreciated. They are what help me keep justifying taking 2 hours out of my work week going. As far as content comes, my latest video is part 2 of my little Russia two-parter talking about basically Putin's Russia and the lead up to the war in Ukraine. That video is out. It's been out for a little bit now. My next video, which is coming out right after the stream is over, so at 2 o'clock, when this stream ends, there will be a new video that has just come out on Step Back, and it's going to be about Y2K and the rise of apocalyptic, like the apocalyptic thinking in American culture, and how that plus Y2K fed a lot of people into the militia movement in the far right, and how it became this sort of moment for the militia. So there's that. If you want to submit questions to the stream, please do so. We don't have that many questions today, so you can put a link. I'm going to put a link in the chat, but the link is on the screen if you just want to type it out. You can submit a question and talk about it. There's no Mia this week, so there's going to be a lot more focus on the questions because I need something to bounce off of. Otherwise, I'm just going to sort of ad-lib for a couple hours, make things really complicated. And of course, if there's any new people in the chat, if this is your first time watching, please make yourself known. Say hello. We have a very welcoming chat community on both Twitch and YouTube. So join on in and say hello. All right. So without further ado, let's see what's going on. What is going on, chat? Let's see. Yeah, today is the what day in Canada it's Remembrance Day. In the U.S. it's some other Veterans Day, Memorial Day. I don't know, one of those days. And I think Remembrance Day is observed in many of the sort of Commonwealth parts. It's the anniversary of the end of the First World War, which is probably the best part of the First World War. Honestly, that's my favorite part of the First World War is its ending. Let's see who we got here. Al Tyrell, Pim, Three-Edged Sword, Orange Man, and Rakalon. Sweet. Hello. Hello, everybody. Veterinarians Day? Yeah. For real. The thing I think little people are talking about is that Oregon, Vermont, Tennessee, and Alabama banned all forms of slavery, even with the exception made by the 13th Amendment. That's nice. So the idea is that you can't do involuntary labor on, like if you have a prison sentence, which is nice because, yeah, the 13th Amendment has a loophole where they can still subject people to slavery if they are, if it's part of a prison sentence, basically. So there is that. They put on God Save the King on Remembrance Day? Oh, God. Oh, God. That's awful. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Yeah, so... This week of Discourse has been wild. I really wish Mia was here because we have, like... There was the American midterms, which have still yet to be fully hashed out, which is very fun. And then we also have Elon Musk buying Twitter and causing an absolute shitstorm. Both of those very funny, very hilarious stuff going down. Do not keep up with the U.S. midterms. You have other things to worry about. Well, if you want the long story short, it is that it was bad for the Democrats, but not as bad as it could have been. And now people are trying to figure out who to blame or thank for why. The main culprits, people are saying, the main ones that come to mind are young people. Apparently, according to exit polls, people under 30 voted like so overwhelmingly in favor of Democrats and actually came out in bigger numbers than were expected, which resulted in a lot of Democrats, like even the Democrats picking up a seat in the House. We'll see how the final numbers shake out, but because I think things are still counting. But yeah, some not so bad turnout there. It was still a setback because, you know, the president's party always kind of takes a hit during elections, especially during economic bad times. The idea that a not so popular president who has like something like a 60-something% disapproval rate, and also during a bad economy, that the president's party didn't do as bad as we thought it would is actually kind of a little bit of a surprise. And then, it seems that now this is the official time when Gen Z has become just old enough that they're going to be the reason that everything is bad now. So millennials are passing the torch of being blamed for every bad thing to Gen Z. Congratulations on you guys. I'm glad you guys got that. It led to some pretty funny things. Like now, because young people voted so heavily for the Democrats, there's some like weird parts of like Republican people trying to say that they should raise the voting age to 21 just to keep. Because, like, I don't know, Republicans know that their days are numbered. They don't have the numbers. They don't, like, they are basically an explicitly white supremacist, Christian fascist political party that has a smaller and smaller demographic that actually subscribes to their poisonous ideology. And so they've responded by basically becoming more and more against the concept of democracy. So their whole thing is to disenfranchise more people and take more votes away from people and change the district so that people's votes mean less and less. So that's fun. They're basically getting ready for minority rule. So yeah, the idea of raising the voting age is just, you know, plays right into that. The second So that is one factor. The other factor that I think is also a little bit undersung, but I think is actually a pretty interesting thing that I guess we didn't anticipate how big of an effect it would be, but it ended up being one. Is that basically so many Republicans died of COVID in the last 2 years, like since 2020. So many, like if you look at like the numbers of like party affiliation with people who died of COVID, Republicans disproportionately, like by a large number, died of COVID. Like if you look at the graph, it's like if you're a Republican, you had a way higher chance of dying of COVID for, various reasons that are very understandable. Somewhere between either being an older demographic or by refusing to follow any of the actual like public health rules about COVID, or not getting vaccinated and injecting yourself with bleach or eating horse paste or whatever, or drinking fish tank cleaner, one of those various things, instead of getting vaccinated. Sort of resulted in a disproportionate amount of Republicans dying of COVID, and that might have actually swung some several parts, some counties and some states and stuff like that, which is extremely funny. So you can thank the Boomer Remover and Gen Z for delivering this victory, this smaller defeat than expected for the Democrats. What's it called? Republicans are going to get back to the point where they're going to be like, you need to be a landowner before you're allowed to vote or something. Also, the U.S. Supreme Court is doing a case about laws regarding sovereignty for indigenous nations regarding child services. Interesting. Be curious how that turns out. Other things too that I think are kind of neat is that our how do I explain this? I actually kind of forgot what I was going to say. I wonder if the Canadian Conservative Party will suffer the same effect. Maybe. The Canadian Conservative Party. So the main thing about Canadian politics is that our Conservative Party and our Liberal Party are virtually identical in their like political outlook. At least it had been for a very long time. Every leader of the Conservatives was an extremely was a right of center, but more or less centrist. And every Liberal has been a right of center, more or less centrist. So most of the differences between Liberals and Conservatives boiled down to regional affiliation, essentially. The only real, there's parts of the country that only voted Liberal. There are parts of the country that only vote Conservative. And there's, a few battlegrounds where they fight over weird things like, taxes and smaller, the battlegrounds for Canadian federal politics are almost always called the 905 or the GTA or whatever you want to call it, the sort of suburbs around Toronto. That is the only real battleground the Liberals and Conservatives really have. And usually they decide who's going to who's going to have the controlling part of Parliament. We'll see what happens. The last election, the Conservatives, the last two elections actually, the Conservatives have gotten more votes but got less seats because of first past the post. Because while they got more votes, they are their wins, they rack up huge numbers in places like Alberta. There's parts of Alberta where they get 80% of the vote in some ridings. But then the Liberals always tend to win in ridings where there's a competitive three-way race between the New Democrat, the New Democrat, the Conservative, and the Liberal. Or I think they picked up a few seats in actually this year or last election. They picked up actually no seats really changed. One seat changed the entire thing. But yeah, it's been what's it called? Since Harper, it's been leaning farther right, except O'Toole. Yes and no. It's been leaning further right, yes, but also the Liberals have also been leaning further right at the exact same time. So, yes, the Conservative Party is more has become more right-wing ever since the Progressive Conservative Party fell apart and reformed as just the Conservative Party. But the Liberal Party has become just as right-wing, if not, in sometimes they actually kind of almost flanked the Conservatives and went more right-wing than the Conservatives on a few things. So that's still every single time, if you ever see a leaders debate in Canadian federal politics, it always ends up being the Liberals and the Conservatives just struggling to find anything that differentiates them from each other because their policies are almost identical. And that most of their differences are just regional affiliations. Like the Conservatives are more popular out in the West. The Liberals are more popular out in the East, like the Maritimes and Newfoundland and stuff like that. And they also have, they do okay in Quebec as well and Ontario. But, and then the Conservatives and Liberals really only ever fight it out in the suburbs around Toronto. But yeah, it's a thing, But the thing is, it might change now because the Conservatives have a new party leader by the name of Poilievre, who is definitely doing more culture war shit, and so he might try to weaponize anti-cancel culture, anti-woke bullshit that Canadians are getting more and more swept into to ride that to the leadership. Because basically what happened in the last election is that because of COVID restrictions and the sort of absolute fucking meltdown that the right had to anything that had to do with the public good, the People's Party of Canada, which is a fascist political party that ran in the election under the leadership of a guy by the name of Maxime Bernier, he did not win a single seat, but got enough of the vote that he probably cost the Conservatives at least a couple seats, possibly even government. Although the Liberals did end up getting a majority government, so or minority government, sorry. So the balance was pretty tight, and there is a chance the People's Party might have swayed that at least a little bit more. So the new leader is trying to be more more trying to lean into the things that the Conservative leaders have tried to shy away from in the past, because the whole thing about the Conservative Party, or at least the old Progressive Conservative Party, that still has a lot of people in the upper echelons of the new Conservative Party. I know this is going to be really confusing, so here's what happened. The Progressive Conservative Party was the Conservative Party of Canada, and then in the early 90s, they completely fell apart because of NAFTA, basically. Kind of at the end of the Reagan era, essentially. And they got sort of pushed back by a more right-wing party called the Reform Party. And in the early 2000s, 2006 about, they merged the Reform Party and the the Reform Party and the Progressive Conservatives merged into just the Conservative Party, which then formed government pretty soon afterwards. So that's why things are confusing. But yes, so progressive conservative thought is that they can be economically conservative, but not with an explicit look into not leaning into culture war bullshit. That has been a lot of times in Canada. Stephen Harper sort of played more with culture war bullshit, trying to push some Islamophobic shit. But for the most part, Conservative Party leadership was very much let's just play minor footsie with culture war stuff, but for the most part we'll stick out of it, because Canadians don't really in Canadian politics, talking about culture war type issues is kind of considered not great. Those trying to make those things an issue in politics sort of is not popular with Canadians, and usually people who try to push it get punished at the ballot box. But that's ignoring our sort of post 2016 now that Donald Trump is, had his effect on America, and it makes its way to Canada, and like COVID drove the right absolutely fucking crazy, and just there's been a rise because of things like Donald Trump and the sort of general decline of democracy around the world. There's been a rise in neo-fascist groups in Canada, like the Wolf Pack in Quebec, the Sons of Odin out west, and like various other groups. Some, like the Proud Boys, have been banned as hate groups and terrorist organizations, but still, the sort of far right is becoming more and more of a presence in Canadian politics, and the breakoff of the People's Party of Canada shows that if the right really wants to have a future in Canada, they have to embrace fascism, essentially. And Poilievre is probably the first attempt at trying to do something like that, at trying to undermine the People's Party of Canada by introducing more racism into what was up until then, like racism and transphobia. Trying to, introduce that into what was up until then just a explicitly pro-Armageddon and fucking over the poor party. Because before then, the only real things that the Conservatives made issues about was how much they wished to destroy the planet as fast as humanly possible by turning the entire country of Canada into a network of oil pipelines that all just head directly for Alberta. And that is the only point of Canada, is to be the place where oil pipelines go. That was basically like conservative policy about everything, into the point where they had a prime minister for like 10 years who was an oil company lobbyist, essentially. And then after the war, after being prime minister, he went off to become an oil lobbyist. And second, just fucking over the poor in any way possible. Trying to undermine as many things we can have, so that's fun. Poilievre might change things up a bit. Might change the thing. Who knows? We'll see. The last election that happened was last year, and it was a bit of a disaster. Like, they called this election. A lot of people were like, why did you call this election? This was completely pointless. The Liberal Party thought that they could pick up some seats. But everybody was like questioning the Liberals, being like, why the fuck would you do this? Why would you call an election in the middle of a pandemic? When, like, they got elected before, and they had like a full 4 years before they had to call another election. Like, there was an election in 2019, right before the pandemic started, and they didn't have to have another election until 2024. But the Liberals decided to call one randomly anyway, and they gave such terrible excuses. They basically just avoided the question, and every time they brought it up, they just like did like an epic dodge. But we had the election, and then a total of 1 seat changed. The Liberals got a net loss of 1 seat. Florida and Texas count 99% of their ballots election night, and we know the results in a couple hours. They have a much bigger populations than Nevada, Arizona, Alaska. Oh, is this, are you some sort of like, oh, if people don't fight, vote, like, what's it called? If the fascists win the election, then it was fine. But if the fascists don't win the election, then it was bad. Is that what that is? Is that what this person is? I do love how nakedly transparent it is. Like, the people who are literally saying it were like, if I win, then we know that the vote wasn't rigged. But if I lose, then you know that the vote was rigged. And it's like, cool. The Bloc Québécois did regain a bunch. They didn't regain a bunch of seats in 2021, but they definitely did better than they did last time. But overall, like, the governing party had only like most of the Bloc Québécois gain came at the expense of the NDP, not the Liberals. At various points in Canadian history, the Progressive Conservatives had more progressive policies than the Liberals. The CPC, not so much. True, but the CPC and the Liberals have also not disagreed on many issues. On social issues, there's a lot of things that the Liberals would take a stance on, but the Conservatives would just not take a stance on. But when it comes to like major policies, like they're both pro-pipeline, they're both anti-environment, they're both like basically anti-union, pro like what's it called, neoliberal, like what's it called, tax cuts for the rich, like all of those like basic things. They all are on the same page on. They're you know, the way they talk about it is different, but for the most part, like their general policies are virtually identical. The only thing is that the next election, the CPC might try to lean heavier on like weird culture war stuff, in which case they might actually have a difference. We'll see. Here, maybe we can actually, you can look at the results and you can see how sad it was. Let's see if I actually remember how this works. Okay, here we go. So, Canadian 2021 federal Canadian election. So this was, yeah. Even shit. Oh man. I forgot that the Bloc Québécois has more seats than the NDP now. That's fun. Very fun. So, if you can see here, this is 2019 versus 2021. So, the Liberals went from getting 33% of the vote to 32.6% of the vote and got a total of, they gained a total of 3 seats. Actually... 5 seats, I guess, if you count Disillusion here. 2019, the Conservatives got 121 and finished with 119. Bloc Québécois had 0 change. NDP gained 1 seat. The Greens lost 1 seat. Like, this is an extraordinarily small parliamentary change. Just nothing actually changed, because it went from getting, like, this isn't enough for a majority, so they just ended up not having any change. I think the big gain for the Bloc Québécois was more in 2019, because they took an absolute fucking shellacking in the 2015 election, and they came back pretty hard in 2019. So. Aren't progressives and conservatives opposite? Isn't it an either-or situation? Progressive. So the idea of progressive conservative is that that they were conservatives that didn't wade into like social stuff. Like in Canadian politics, being socially conservative is kind of considered faux pas. Like talking about, like in Canada, bringing up subjects like abortion and gay marriage and stuff like that is considered bad politics, and it'll make you pretty unpopular if you try to make that into an issue. So the Conservatives never got into things like whether or not gays are people, or whether or not like let's do more racism, or like those kinds of issues are not are considered sort of out of bounds for Canadian politics. And so the progressive Conservatives were like, you can hate poor people without being a degenerate racist, you know. But now they're like, actually, let's reinvestigate. Let's go back into doing the racism. That looks more fun, and they probably will get rewarded for that. Is my guess. Yeah. Are conservatives on track to win the next election? I don't know if there's any real polling on that right now. The thing is that we are pretty far out from an election. Like, unless there's like, because like what happened was that the Liberals and NDP made a deal to preserve an electoral coalition. So between the Liberals and NDP, with that alliance, they're able to keep governing. But if that ever breaks down and we end up in another election, which could happen anywhere from like next year to or it could not. Minority governments in Canada tend to be pretty unstable. So we don't really know what's going to happen. Yeah, sorry, American here. Yeah, no problem. No problem. I'm an American history specialist, and so I can probably try to explain things to you. It works a bit different here in Canada. In the United States, they have In the United States, the Constitution mandates that you have an election every other year. That's not how it works in Canadian politics. The way it works in Canadian politics is that there's essentially two ways that an election can happen. Either the government, like the Parliament itself, votes to dissolve the government and have another election. This usually happens through things like, if the governing party thinks that they can pick up seats, they may call an election. That's kind of what happened in 2021, although that's considered kind of not a great reason to have an election, but it is a thing they can do. The other is if a vote of non-confidence goes through. So this typically happens when Parliament is pushing through its budget. So right now we have what's called a minority government, which is when the party that is in charge, the party that is ruling the government right now in Canada, that's the Liberal Party of Canada. They are the largest political party, but they have less than half of the seats. That's what a minority government is. And so that means that if they want to pass any legislation, they have to make a deal with another political party. And what tends to happen in this situation, Cool. Oh boy. Oh, are we picking up again?